Yeah, I mentioned sometimes there's going to be a shortcut. You don't have to actually just multiply the two denominators together. Um, and that is actually finding what's called the, well, let me take a look at here. Okay, for my example problem of 5/8 plus 1/7, okay, I'm going to have to end up multiplying the 8 by 7. And the reason is because I'm trying to find a common denominator, and what that means is I'm going to try to find a common multiple of 8 and 7. Right? So again, finding a common multiple of 8 and 7. And what that means is I want a number that 8 divides into evenly, and also 7 divides into evenly. And the least common multiple is going to be the one that is the smallest. So 8 and 7 both go into 56 because 8 times 7 is 56. 8 and 7 also both go into 112, but that's not as low as 56. So if I use 56, that's as low as you can get. That's still divisible by 7 and by 8. And so that's going to be my least common multiple. It's going to be my fraction simplified at the end. I won't have to simplify anything else. It's already done. Okay. So if I look at this, in fact, if I do this, 7 times 5 is 35. 8 times 1 is 8. I already know because my denominator is already in this least terms. It's already the least common multiple. Without even adding this up, I know it's going to be that's already just simplified. I'm going to simplify the thing when I'm done. So 35 plus 8 is going to be 43. And sure enough, that is simplified. Right? 43 is a prime number and it's simplified. All right, so let's take a look at a number where if you do the add, if you multiply straight across the denominators, it won't be simplified because it's not the least common multiple. So let's go ahead and do, let's try, 3/8 plus 1/6. Okay, so here's the thing about this one. If I just do my straight across, okay, if I do my straight across and then my diagonals, I will end up with, on the bottom, I'll have 8 times 6. And I'll have 6 times 3 up here, so that's 18. 8 times 1 is up here, 8. 18 plus 8 is 26. Okay, and those of you who know this know that this is not a simplified fraction. Right? 26/48, because 26 and 48 are both even. So I could divide this by 2 and that by 2, and I will get 13 over 24, which now is simplified. Okay? Now here's the thing. Now this is totally fine. This is an acceptable way of doing it. I strongly suggest doing it for a while until you're really comfortable with this. Is always multiplying your denominators and then simplifying at the end. Okay, sometimes you'll need to simplify, sometimes you won't. The times when you will need to simplify are when there's actually a lower multiple, a lower common denominator than the one you get when you're just multiplying straight across. In this case, let me write these again, 3/8 and 1/6. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do subtracting, just for fun. Okay. And again, whatever answer I'm going to get here is actually not going to be simplified. I know that right away just by looking at this because I know my common denominators. If I do this straight across, it's not going to be simplified. I'll have to simplify at the end. And the reason is because my least common multiple isn't 48. The least common multiple between 8 and 6 is not 48. If you count by 8s and you count by 6s, there's a number you get to both times that is lower than 48. Okay? 8 divides into 24 and 6 divides into 24. That's the least common multiple. So how do I get that? How do I know it's 24? Well, here's the one way you can find the least common multiple of two numbers. I'm going to write 8 down right here. I'm going to write 6 over here. I'm going to find their least common multiple. All right, basically what I do is I start listing their multiples. So I start counting by 8s. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, and keep going. 6, I'm going to do the same thing over here. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. And I'll look for ones that are similar. So the one that is shared, one that is common to both is 24. And it is the least one common to both, so it's the least common multiple. That's one way of finding it. Okay. Another way of finding the least common multiple is by factoring the numbers. So if I remember the factor tree, 8 is equal to 2 times 4, and 4 is equal to 2 times 2. 6 is equal to 2 times 3. And the thing that they have in common, their common factor, the greatest common factor is 2. So my least common multiple is if I take all their factors and multiply them together, except for the one that's repeated. So I'm not going to multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. I'm not going to do the one that's repeated. I'm going to multiply 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And that'll give me the least common multiple. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. Okay, that's two different ways of finding the least common multiples of two given numbers. So if I want to make this, if I want to make it so I don't have to simplify at the end, that's what I would do. I would find the least common multiple first. In this case, it's 24. All right. So here's my question. If I have 3/8, okay, that looks something like this. Okay, it looks kind of ugly. But if I have 3/8 and I want to turn it into 24 pieces, not 48, but 24, how many columns do I have to divide them up? I mean, how many rows do I have to divide them up into this case? In other words, what times 8 is 24? Well, 3. Right? Now I have 24. Right? So whatever I multiply this one, I got it. In other words, I took my 3/8 and I divided each one into 3 pieces, right? So now I have 9 of them. I took my 3 multiplied by 3 to get 24, right? So that's 9 over 24. 3 over 8 is the same as 9 over 24. Same thing with the 6th. If I want to take my 1/6 and turn it into 24ths, I'm going to divide each of these 6ths into 4 pieces, which means I'm going to multiply that 6 times 4 and that 1 by 4. And I'll end up with 4. Okay, so that's a way of doing it. Now I can just subtract because they have the same denominator. So 9 minus 4 is 5. So 5 24ths. And because that's the least common multiple, is 24, I know that I can't reduce it anymore. I can't simplify anymore. That's already simplified as much as it is. Okay, so that's another way of doing adding and subtracting fractions is by taking a look and finding the least common multiple. Again, though, I wouldn't really suggest it until you're really comfortable with this. I would just do the add, multiply straight across the denominators, and then multiply cross for the numerators, changing them. And then if you need to, simplifying at the end. So here's another example of one that I'll just give you real quick. Let's see here. We're going to do 1/6 plus 4/9. Okay. So again, just looking at these denominators, there is a common factor here, right? 3 divides both into 6 and into 9. So my least common multiple, my least common denominator is not going to be just 6 times 9, right? I know it's going to be something different. So I'm going to multiply straight across them, okay? Just to show you what's going to end up. So I know by multiplying straight across I get 54, but I'm going to have to end up simplifying my fraction at the end here because it's not the least common factor. All right, the least common multiple, sorry. And then if I multiply this straight across, I get 54. If I multiply the diagonal, I get 9. If I multiply this diagonal, I get 24. If I add 9 and 24, I get 33. 33 54ths, but it's not simplified. I know that already because this isn't the least common multiple. So I'm going to have to divide both of these by 3. And in fact, you can actually tell what number to divide it by because the number I'm going to divide it by to simplify is actually the greatest common factor of these two numbers, right? So 3 goes into 6, 3 goes into 9. So I know that at the very end I have to divide both my numerator and my denominator by that very 3. And that'll give me on the top over here, it'll give me a numerator of 11. On the bottom, it'll give me 18. Okay, 18, that now is the least common multiple of 6 and 9. 6 times 3 is 18, 9 times 2 is 18. So that's a little bit kind of extra tidbits and information there. You can use that if you like. But again, yeah, I would always, just when I'm adding or subtracting fractions, I would go ahead and always do the multiplying across the denominators, multiply the numerators diagonally, and add them or subtract them as needed. And then simplifying by dividing by the greatest common factor if you need to do so.